Hey, good evening, everybody. Happy Wednesday. We're back. Good evening, bro.
Good evening, man.
All right, we're back to give you guys our top five fantasy football quarterbacks this year. Uh, as usual, before we jump into that, we'll go ahead and cover the top five from last year. Again, good to see you, bro. Glad to talk some fantasy football. I think this is the topic we've been. I think this is the topic we've been waiting for is the quarterbacks, and I think that's why we saved it for last. So,
Yeah.
all right, here we go. So here's the top five from last year. At number one, we have Josh Allen, who was the top fantasy player in all of fantasy football. He scored the most points in standard scoring, of course, standard PPR. And then we have Justin Herbert at number two. We have Tom Brady at number three, Patrick Mahomes at number four, and then Aaron Rodgers at number five. So last year, the usual suspects, I guess you could say, as far as Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. And then, of course, Mahomes has been up there for a while. And then two of the younger quarterbacks with Josh Allen and Justin Herbert at the top there. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and have you give your top five first, bro. Run us through it.
All right. Yeah. So I'm excited to be talking quarterbacks too. This is one that I gave you my picks a few days ago, and I stuck to it. I kind of toggled because I know, just like always, every week I'm going to have some pretty unpopular picks. But that's kind of why I like. That's kind of why I like going against the grain a little bit. But I want to start with Josh Allen, someone who, if you're a fantasy football player or if you're a fantasy football fan, everyone knows I'm not going against the grain with this pick right here. I believe actually Josh Allen's going to finish number one again. The Bills offense, even though they did lose OC Brian Dable, I don't believe they're going to be any worse for wear. They still have Josh Allen's athletic ability. He learned a lot under Dable. You don't just lose that muscle memory. It's there. Once it's there, it's there. I don't see him regressing. They still have Stephon Diggs. They have up-and-coming Gabriel Davis, who just had a monster playoffs for the Buffalo Bills. Everyone can remember the game against the Chiefs. So I think he actually has a really good season this year. Maybe someone to pick up as a flex option. Just throwing that out there, Gabriel Davis. But overall, the Bills offense isn't going to be any worse. So I don't think I need to really argue my point on this one or, go too much detail why I think Josh Allen's going to be number one again, because the talent's there, not just for him, but everyone on the offense. The Bills offense is just high octane. Early reports are they're even trying to make that offense more versatile for Josh Allen, which is kind of a scary thought. So I've got him number one, roughly the same numbers as last season, 35, 36 touchdowns, 15 INTs, which actually was a career high. Probably about 6 rushing touchdowns I got him at. But with those types of numbers, he should be number one. Number two, another one, not really going against the grain here. Herbert, again, just another one of those quarterbacks who's really, really good and has a really, really good supporting cast. So when you combine the two, right, when you combine a good quarterback with a bunch of really good players, you're going to get results. And Herbert's shown that in his first 2 seasons as quarterback for the Chargers. They've got Keenan Allen, they've got Mike Williams, they've got Austin Eckler, and everyone knows those guys eat in fantasy. I mean, Keenan Allen, he's a last year was the number 10 or 11 PPR receiver. Mike Williams had a really strong year. He started off really, really strong, kind of faded towards the end of the year. Eckler, he's a top 5 running back fantasy. So, when you got a lot of good football players and a lot of good fantasy players, as your quarterback, if you're a really good quarterback, it just kind of makes a good recipe for success. So I've got Herbert as my number 2 finish. So him and Allen going to finish in the same spot. So my number 3 quarterback, and this is where I really start to go against the grain a little bit, is with Matt Stafford. I actually have him here as my number 3 fantasy QB. He finished number 5 last year. I think he gets a little bit of a boost. Hopefully get some more consistency from that wide receiver 2 position on the Rams. They did go through a few different receivers there last year with Robert Woods and him getting injured, OBJ, Van Jefferson. So I think with a little more consistency, and Allen Robinson's a really, really good player. He's a good receiver. So it's not like they just drafted someone to fill a role at the receiver position. I do believe that Allen Robinson's going to help Matt Stafford. He's also going to help Cooper Kupp probably maybe have a better season, and overall just help the offense. They're going to hopefully have a healthy Cam Akers for the whole year. That should help as well. So overall, again, same scenario. When you've got a strong offense, a high-powered offense, you've got good weapons. That makes for a good recipe. Again, and I know I sound a little bit redundant, but facts are facts. I mean, I'd rather have a good quarterback with a good bunch of offensive players than a good quarterback with a mediocre supporting cast, a la maybe why you don't see Mahomes on my list right now. So with Stafford, again, he's going to have terrific weapons. He's a really good quarterback. They like to throw the ball. They get a lot of big plays from Kupp. Robinson should score a lot of touchdowns in this offense. And overall, Stafford's going to have a really big year. I just hope he doesn't win the Super Bowl. Yeah, so my fourth quarterback on this list is Jalen Hurts. He finished as a QB1 last year. He was like right there at the tail end of all the QB1s. He finished number 10 in fantasy. He didn't have the greatest statistical season. He wasn't extremely efficient, but he played well enough to finish as a QB1, and that's kind of what you're hoping for early on from a young quarterback. He had 16 touchdowns with 9 INTs, but he did have 10 rushing touchdowns, which is huge. So he gives you that dual threat. And then this year they bring in A.J. Brown in the offseason, just before the draft. They bring in A.J. Brown, and that's just going to help him out tremendously, having another weapon for him. So now you have, again, just like some of these other guys, really, really good weapons. Devonta Smith, who I believe is really good. You got A.J. Brown, who's proven to be a good receiver in the league. You've got Miles Sanders, who he's not really had a great career, I would say, but he's shown flashes. And when you add other weapons around you, Miles Sanders could be a guy that actually has a better season because of the addition of A.J. Brown as well. So the combination of talent on the offense, they really did start to gel a little bit towards the end of the season. The Eagles' O-line is pretty good. Not great, but they're better than a lot of the offensive lines in the league. So I believe another year in the offense, a little bit of continuity there for Hurts. And that addition of A.J. Brown is really going to make it easy for Hurts to take a step forward. And then we mentioned in a previous podcast, their schedule, it's not very tough this year. So the level of competition, at least right now on paper, the level of competition that Hurts is going to be facing, it's not the best. I mean, he's not going to be playing the best teams, at least right now on paper. So I believe that makes for another good recipe here for success for Hurts to finish in my top 5. And then I want to move on to my number 5 here. And I know a lot of people may say, oh, you don't even know if he's going to start. Listen, we know Trey Lance is going to start for the 49ers. Trey Lance, I have him as my number 5 quarterback. Oh, no one knows what we're going to get. Yeah, we don't have a lot of tape on Trey Lance. True. He's definitely no Mahomes, but let's kind of think about this. Mahomes, nobody thought Mahomes would come in after sitting behind Alex Smith and finish number 1 his first full season as a fantasy quarterback. And that's exactly what he did. He finished number 1. He threw 50 touchdown passes during that year. Now, of course, I'm not expecting Trey Lance to go out and throw 50 touchdown passes, especially not in a run-heavy offense. But what I am expecting, and again, I'm not expecting him to even be number 1. I'm expecting to be my number 5 fantasy quarterback, a combination of good deep balls. Even in his 2 games last year, he actually had the highest QB rating on deep balls with 10 attempts or more. So in 2 games, he actually threw more deep balls than Jimmy G probably threw all year. So I do believe they're going to throw more deep balls. He has weapons. Listen, the 49ers have weapons. They got Debo. They've got Ayuk. They've got Kittle. Elijah Mitchell broke records for the 49ers last year in their running game. I can imagine that Kyle Shanahan's got some plays up his sleeve to really utilize the talent of Trey Lance, get him out on play action, let him use his legs, let him get some rushing yards. So with Lance, again, being a dual threat, the 49ers going to run the ball. They have a lot of weapons. I actually believe the 49ers are going to be able to provide Lance more weapons than what Mahomes had when he actually took over as full-time starter for the Chiefs. He had Tyreek Hill and Kelsey. They've never really had a good running back. Who's their running back? Coach. They've had a good coach. So the weapons make a difference. In this case, in a lot of the cases with a lot of these players on my list, it's all about the weapons they have around them, the offenses they have around them, because we all know that there are good quarterbacks that don't have great weapons, and they don't do really good in fantasy football at all. So I do believe Trey Lance, I'm dug in on this. I believe he not only has the potential to be top 5, I have him at my number 5 spot. I peg him for about 25 plus touchdowns. Couple interceptions because, you know, we don't know how accurate he is. So probably about 10 touchdowns. But his legs and the rushing touchdowns is what's going to do it for me. I believe he's going to put up a lot of rushing yards, probably over 1,000 yards rushing, similar to Lamar Jackson early on in his career, and score double-digit touchdowns. A lot of goal line work for Trey Lance.
All right. Well, obviously, I'm not going to argue with your top 2. I have the same top 2 when I show here in a minute, for all the reasons you said. I'll talk about Jalen Hurts here in a minute as well, kind of give my thoughts on him. Matt Stafford, I can't argue with, you know, your reasoning behind that. And I don't disagree that Allen Robinson can definitely help him elevate himself up into that top 3, possibly even higher. I think that just because of, not that Matt Stafford's going to regress, and if he does, it won't be by much, and it'll be just due to him getting a year older. I just think that the other guys that I'm going to talk about are just going to take their game to another level to keep him off of the top 5. But I think he's due to have another phenomenal year. Obviously, he won the Super Bowl last year. I think for him, you know, the key is going to be to limit some of the turnovers. There were times last year where Matt Stafford looked like, you heard me all year long, Detroit Matt, where just out of nowhere, there would be 2 or 3 random interceptions, just bad throws, you know, just bad decisions. Obviously, it didn't cost him in the end. It almost did. You know, Jaquiski Tartt dropped the touchdown. I dropped an interception that was a gift that probably could have put the NFC Championship game away for the 49ers. But it didn't cost them, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl. But we're talking about fantasy, obviously. Interceptions are going to hurt them. Those bad decisions, you know, where you give the ball away, that's going to, you know, really hurt you in the end. So I think if he can limit those, he definitely has a good shot. He has a good shot, you know, without, you know, cutting down the turnovers, but I think that would definitely propel him into that top 5. I would love to see Trey Lance in the top 5, obviously being a 49ers fan, because if he's in the top 5, that means that he's making big plays and the 49ers are scoring a lot of points, gaining a lot of yards, all that good stuff. I have to see it before I put him up there. I think he's going to have a great year, but I have to see it before I put him in that top 5 for me. 1,000 yards rushing, I think, with Kyle Shanahan as the offensive coordinator, as the de facto offensive coordinator.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be difficult for him to get 1,000 yards as a quarterback. I think he can have a good season running the ball, and I think he'll gain, obviously, quite a bit more yards than any quarterback we've had in quite some time at that position. But I don't see him getting 1,000 yards with the way that Shanahan likes to use his running backs and things like that. And you got to remember this. They invested a lot in Trey Lance. And the last thing we want to do is have him. They're going to use him in the running game, but I don't see them overusing him and putting him in a position where, you know, he gets hurt and there goes the future because you traded away all your draft picks and your quarterback's maimed on the sideline. But again, I would love that. I would love to see him in the top 5. I definitely would be, happy with that, because that means that the 49ers, like I said, are getting a lot of yards, scoring a lot of touchdowns. And with the defense that we have, if he's scoring a lot of touchdowns, that means that we're winning a lot of games. So I would definitely be good with that for sure. So yeah, that's really my take on yours. I can't argue much with what you have there. Again, like I said, I can see Stafford being in the top 5. I just don't have him in my top 5. That's all.
Yeah, with him, I think Allen Robinson just going to help him actually cut down on those turnovers. He did have 17 INTs last year, which was close to a career high, just a few shy for him. So being a really good, really experienced veteran receiver, I do believe that should help him cut down on those interceptions and those turnovers. And then with Lance, I mean, he only started 2 games and a couple of spot play. He had 168 rushing yards, so he was on track for 1,000 yards. But I feel you, man. He hasn't really put a lot of tape together. We've only seen flashes, so we'll see, man. I'm excited too.
Yeah.
I hope it does happen. I know you do.
Yeah, I definitely do. And I think that if he gets 1,000 yards and it's schemed and things like that, that's great. I think there's another way he may get 1,000 yards, and that's if he just, reverts to one read and then takes off a lot. That could lead to him getting a lot of yards, but obviously that would hurt him in the passing game. So hopefully he has a well-balanced first season as a starter, and it turns out with him being in the top 5 because you predicted it, and us winning the Super Bowl because I need it. I can't take any more of these losses.
Yeah, I mean, I think certain teams have proved the sit 'em a year method works. Mahomes, and again, I'm not saying Lance is Mahomes, but he's got raw talent. The guy's athletic. We've seen it. We've seen it in the few games he played. We've seen where he needs to improve, but we saw it with Mahomes too. So I hope we can just get the same, or even if it's just a little bit less. I mean, he doesn't have to be as good as Mahomes. It's a little bit,
I'm cool with that. If he ends up being a great quarterback, I'll be able to say I was at his very first start.
There you go.
I like it. All right, cool. Let's go ahead. I'm gonna jump over, give my top 5.
Yeah, let's see.
Again, I've got a few picks the same as you. Again, my top 2, I have Josh Allen finishing at number 1 again, just like you. Like I mentioned earlier, he scored the most points in fantasy football last year. I think he does it again this year. The Bills are already a pass-heavy team. As much as they try to implement the run, that's just not who they are. And when they do run, oftentimes it's Josh Allen that's running the ball for them anyways. He had 763 rushing yards last year, 6 TDs. And really, I think, that's what sets a lot of these guys that we're talking about apart, is that running ability, that ability to get those touchdowns down in the red zone without having to throw the ball. And then those busted plays where they're able to scramble and gain yards and things with their legs. So I think Josh Allen continues to impress, and it continues to improve. And I think he has a very similar season to what he did last year. I think he does the same thing this year. Again, same thing with you when it comes to Justin Herbert. I don't see any reason for regression. Their offense is explosive, no matter where you look, whether it's across the wide receivers, tight end position, running back. They've got some guys that can make things happen when they get an open space. And then again, Justin Herbert is one of those guys that when he gets in the open field, he's pretty dangerous himself. He's a threat around the red zone, and he's hard to bring down, which again leads to those busted plays. He's more athletic than Ben Roethlisberger ever thought about being. But one thing that he does, one trait he has that Big Ben had, is he has the ability at times to shake guys off and extend plays just by being strong and keeping the play going and staying upright. So I think that helps him out, and he finishes, towards the top 3. Again, I have him at number 2. Here's where we differ. Obviously, I know you said you don't have Mahomes in there because of his supporting cast. And I'm going to go ahead and really blow your mind right now and make you scratch your head. I actually think that Patrick Mahomes is going to benefit from Tyreek Hill not being in Kansas City.
Not a chance.
Well, we'll see. The reason I think so is this. Obviously, the plays that when you think about Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, what do you think about? You think about busted plays. You think about broken plays where he's running around in the backfield and Tyreek Hill is finding himself wide open on a 3rd and 14, and he gains 41 yards in the Super Bowl to keep their chances alive and beat the 49ers. Not that I'm bitter or anything, but that's what I envision when I think about those two. I think without Tyreek Hill being there, he's going to have to force himself to stay on schedule more. And what that's going to do, I think, is it's going to make, maybe not initially, but I think what that's going to do is it's going to make that entire offense better as a unit, because they're all going to have to rely on timing, things of that nature. And that's really what Andy Reid's calling card is. Obviously, when you got a guy like Tyreek Hill, you can get away with he covers up a lot of stuff. I think that Andy Reid, though, he's from that West Coast offense that he was one of the disciples of George Seifert and so on, and Mike Holmgren from the 49ers from way back in the day. And their offenses are all built on timing, precision passing, things like that. Obviously, Mahomes has the talent to do all of that. And I think that by the time we get to week 3, week 4, and beyond, I think the Chiefs offense really takes it to another level, because they really start to just rely on running the plays that are called and not have it in the back of their mind. Okay, if things break down, we got Tyreek running down the field, running around, and Patrick's going to find him. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. I think Mahomes is going to take a step forward. I will also say one thing that gives me pause, though, is Patrick Mahomes this year, based off of last year's scoring, Patrick Mahomes plays the 6th toughest fantasy schedule this year. So that's one thing that does give me a little pause. Other than that, though, I think because he's going to have to rely on just being on time and being on schedule, he's going to have a phenomenal season. Number 4, I have Smoking Joe. I think you and I both love this guy. I've loved him ever since I saw him at LSU. He's just a winner. He continues to win, continues to get better. He and Jamar Chase have a connection that's just going to continue to get better and better and better and stronger and stronger and stronger. They have a high-flying offense. I think they have all the confidence in the world coming off of their trip to the Super Bowl. And I really think that he's going to be a mainstay in the top 5, top 6, top 7 in that range for quite some time to come. Just, again, based off of his skill set and his fearlessness and the fact that he's not willing to take chances. So I have him at number 4. Again, when we're talking about strength of schedule for quarterbacks, one thing that gives me a little pause about Joe Burrow is his schedule is actually even a little tougher than Patrick Mahomes. He plays the 4th toughest schedule, according to Fantasy Pros this year. But again, I have a lot of faith in him, Jamar Chase, and that Cincinnati Bengals offense to keep it rolling from last year. And then at number 5, and I think this guy could definitely finish as high as where you had him, maybe even higher. I have Jalen Hurts. Again, another guy that I think I've been high on since he came into the league. He continues to get better every single year, every single week, it seems like. Like you said, that he showed a lot of flashes last year at times of being one of those top flight quarterbacks with his running ability. He's not a bad passer. He's not the greatest passer, but he's not a bad passer either. He can definitely find some guys when they get in the open field. He can fit some tight spirals in there. He's not, again, Patrick Mahomes or anything like that, but he can throw the ball around. Obviously, the Eagles, as you mentioned earlier, they upgraded their offense with the addition of A.J. Brown. We've talked about it in a couple podcasts earlier. They have Goddard at tight end. He's definitely a solid tight end, top flight tight end. They've just really got a solid offense that continues to get better around him. And then again, as you mentioned, his running ability. I think you mentioned it. He had 10 rushing touchdowns last year. He had 784 rushing yards total. Again, another guy that just gives you that added dimension. And I think he continues to get better this year. And the other reason that I had him in my top 5 is, you mentioned it, he doesn't play the toughest, schedule this year. And based on last year's scoring, according to Fantasy Pros, he plays the 3rd easiest schedule for a quarterback in fantasy football this year. So I think with all the things, that he brings to the table, and the fact that unless, some of those defenses surprise us, which obviously could happen, the fact that he's playing a weaker strength of schedule, I think he could, I think he's going to finish top five. He could definitely finish, higher than that as well. But that's my top five. I know that you disagreed with Mahomes. I'm not sure how you feel about Burrow, but those are the guys I got.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really disagree with Burrow much. I don't have him in my top five just because he doesn't present that same dual threat that some of these other guys present. I mean, he's got a really good talent around him, just like these other guys, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Mixon. Their line's much improved from the last few years. Their defense is better. So, they've got a lot of weapons. He just doesn't bring that dual threat. I mean, hey, who knows? Maybe this year he comes out and rushes for a lot of yards and scores a lot of rushing touchdowns, and then maybe next year I put him right in my top five again. But yeah, he's I hate to say one-dimensional quarterback because he can run. I mean, he just doesn't do it as much as these other guys. He really relies on his ability to stay in the pocket, leave guys open, and make the play with his arm rather than his legs. So that's why I don't have him up in my top five. Is just a simple fact that he's really not a dual threat guy, but he can sling the ball. He can sling that rock, man.
I thought about that, and I don't want people to jump to the conclusion with the name I'm about to bring up because I'm not comparing the two at all. Okay, but okay, the number 3 quarterback last year was Tom Brady, and he is the complete opposite of athletic, and he's the complete opposite of a dual threat. But you get 4th and 1 or 4th and goal or 3rd and goal or whatever it is, you know what's coming. It's that TB12 special that we always talk about, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying, again, I don't want people to think that I'm saying Joe Burrow is Tom Brady because that is not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is when we talk about, obviously being a dual threat is going to give you that upper hand, but I don't think that not being a dual threat disqualifies him because he's so good at throwing the ball.
No,
that's all.
100%. I agree with you. He could still get in that top five, even not being a dual threat quarterback. I just don't have him in my top five for that reason. That's purely it. Otherwise, he's got all the ability in the world to make it in there. Mahomes, though, let's talk about this guy because I don't have him in my top five. I actually, crazy enough, people are going to think I'm crazy, but I have him as a fringe QB1, the low-end QB1. And same reasoning as you is the busted plays, because when I think of the Tyreek Hill and Mahomes connection, I think of all the off-schedule plays that Mahomes is running around for his life, spinning around in circles, and all of a sudden he finds Tyreek Hill because Tyreek Hill, the cheetah, can zig and zag at 52 miles an hour and get open. 22 miles an hour, right? Next gen stats, 22 miles an hour. But they don't have that anymore. They don't have that. Now, hear me out. They did bring in Juju. They bring in MVS. They've got some additional weapons, right? That should help make the offense more versatile, not really where they're always looking for the deep ball, right? Now, but with that said, I believe the reason why their passing game was always making off-schedule plays is because the running game wasn't very strong. I don't expect that to get any better. Clyde Edwards-Helaire hasn't really shown flashes. They did bring in Ronald Jones this year, who, I mean, let's just be honest, if he was a quality starter, he would have been re-signed in Tampa. So the lack of running game is going to impact the passing game. Still going to be some plays that are going to have to be made off schedule. I just don't believe that they have the personnel. They have talent, but they don't have the same type of personnel, the speedsters. MVS actually is pretty quick, but I don't think he's as talented as Tyreek Hill. Really just knowing where Mahomes is going to need him to be when he, spins around 5 different times and makes a throw. I just don't see it. Even after a few games of developing chemistry and stuff like that, even with the great coach they have, I just don't see Mahomes being able to make those same type of plays, which he's going to need to do. It's not going to change. I don't think it's going to change at all with the new players that they have. They actually lost an offensive lineman in the offseason too, one of their starting offensive linemen. So that's why I'm not all in on Mahomes. Would I draft him in a super flex league? Hell yeah. But, PPR, maybe a redraft, a 10-team league where, you're only rostering one or starting one quarterback. No, I don't have him as a top 5 quarterback because Tyreek Hill, he's not getting enough credit for Mahomes' success throughout the last few years. I mean, they played together for how many years? You would think at some point the off-schedule plays would be something that they could fix, or the busted plays even. And every single year, a lot of their production was off. Mahomes' production was off of busted plays, big plays to Tyreek Hill and Kelsey, whom they still have.
Yeah, no, I can't argue the fact that that's where a lot of their production came from. And there are going to be times where they miss it. I think when it comes to fantasy, though, because again, we're talking about fantasy football, not on the field football.
Yeah,
I think that Mahomes is not going to skip a beat. I think that he's going to be just fine. Now on the field, they are going to miss that big play ability that Tyreek Hill provides. But I think when it comes to fantasy, I think Patrick Mahomes is just going to find other guys to throw the ball to get those yards and touchdowns. Will he get as many touchdowns? I think he might throw a few less, but I don't think it's going to be a big drop off just because of the offense that he's in and the guy he's got at coach. So again, I get where you're coming from, and I think that if we're talking about on the field, they're definitely going to miss Tyreek Hill quite a bit. When it comes to fantasy football, though, I think that Patrick Mahomes is really going to have he's going to have the ability to shine, and it's going to help. Like I said, a lot of these other guys obviously produce a lot more in fantasy football where they otherwise wouldn't because those balls are going to Tyreek Hill. So I see where you're coming from, and I see why someone would argue and say, "Nah, he's not going to be a top 5 fantasy football quarterback." I see it I see the prism from the other side is all.
I don't blame you. I just I'm just not in on Mahomes at this point. Maybe they go through the preseason, maybe training camp. Talk comes out. Some of these guys are gelling with Mahomes, so on and so forth. That might change, but as of right now, I'm just not in on Mahomes. I would draft a handful of guys before I would draft Mahomes, and I think Tyreek Hill, played a big part in his success. I know a lot of people do agree to that, but not just on field, but fantasy success as well. So we'll see. I mean, Juju's no slouch, but he's also, I don't believe, any Tyreek Hill. QVS is still a bit unproven. Yeah, I mean, he played on the Packers, but didn't do a ton there. So a lot of questions still to be answered with that team.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. I'm gonna roll with Mahomes until it's time not to roll with them, though.
I mean, hey, you go with what's worked, right? Until it doesn't work anymore.
That's right. All right, cool. So that's our top 5 fantasy football quarterbacks for 2022. Subject to change. Obviously, we could be wrong, but
I'm always right.
Could be right. We could be right as well. Either way, if you guys don't mind, please go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, leave a comment, and be on the lookout for more content next week and in between today and next Wednesday as well. It was good chatting with you, bro. We'll hook up again next week and talk some more football. We'll start giving our division breakdowns, some more predictions for each team, and eventually get to who our preseason Super Bowl pick and award winners are. So in the meantime, we will check with you guys next week. Be kind, even to Cowboys fans.
Even to Cowboys